Welcome to this edition of Quick Takes here on the Basketball Soapbox. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. In this one, we're going to be talking about the last stretch of the NBA game seasons and who has been more impressive between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. Both these teams have just been on a tear since the start of the new year. The Cleveland Cavaliers were in seventh place and the Knicks were in eighth seed at the start of the new year. And since then have just been on a tear. Since January 1st, Cleveland Cavaliers have been 18-5. They recently just dropped 2 since the All-Star break without Donovan Mitchell, but have been playing great so far, battling with injuries through Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. They've recently returned and have been able to get back into the fold. Have just been playing tremendously, led by Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen in their absence. That two-man game has been really good and more dependent on those two throughout. And looking at their two-man game, Donovan Mitchell a lot more willing to pass the ball to Jared Allen than his time with Rudy Gobert with the Utah Jazz. So those guys have been able to mesh and find a good way to play together. Jared Allen was getting some little bit of all-star consideration leading up until there. If he was playing like that at the beginning of the season, who knows what would have happened. But those two have been playing tremendously. Looking at the New York Knicks, who just recently beat the Philadelphia 76ers, have been 17-7 since the start of the new year, battling through injuries of their own. They're missing Julius Randle with a separated shoulder. OG Anunoby has a chip in his elbow. They removed the bone from there, a loose bone from there. And just looking at their play with Jalen Brunson, who has been on a tear, MVP candidate. Can't speak enough about him and his play, as well as other guys there, OG Anunoby, Bogdan Bogdanovic, who they added, Alec Burks, kind of modernizing their offense ever since the OG Anunoby trade, adding those guys to add more shooting, more diversity. Josh Hart is still there, Dante DiVincenzo, and just a supporting cast that the New York Knicks faithful can get behind. But let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers here, looking at Donovan Mitchell, whose steady play. He was an all-star this year, nearly 29 points per game, 5 rebounds a game, and nearly 7 assists per game. He has really been on a tear, and you're kind of seeing those qualities that he had with the Utah Jazz, leading this Cleveland Cavaliers team through all these injuries. He's recently been out, but through all these injuries, he has been leading there and stepping up every night and has been giving Cleveland fits because they do not know if he's going to be there long term, especially after this season. So they have some decisions to make, but he can look at this team right now. At least they're second in the Eastern Conference, which I think I predicted them before the season. I think I had them third behind the Bucks, but with their steady play and improvement behind him with the shooting with Max Strus, George Niang, and guys like that, Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro has been playing well for them. Looking at what they have been able to do with the absence of Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, who've recently returned, just having good defense, playing good on the offensive end. The shooting helps. J.D. Bickerstaff was kind of on the hot seat. People were looking at it. Is he going to be on the hot seat to be fired? They have really turned it around and have been playing tremendously. Their defense was always good, which I'll get into in a minute. But their offense that has taken a turn, and Donovan Mitchell's a big factor behind that. Moving on to Jared Allen, who has been playing really well in the absence of Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, has been able to find his footing in Cleveland on the offensive end. Was kind of getting some all-star buzz a little bit there with his play of late. Looking at what he's been able to do, 17 points per game, 12 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, holding it down in the middle, being a rim protector, forcing everything out. And Donovan Mitchell being, again, a little more willing to pass to Jared Allen in the offensive end. Jared Allen has been fantastic on that end, as you can see there by the numbers, but he has been really good. And you just think about what Brooklyn had in him in trading him. You thought about what Houston did. Of course, Houston traded him, I believe, to Cleveland. They didn't want him in the trade. But Alfred Sengun's doing good in Houston. But looking at what Jared Allen has been able to do, has been able to be a productive center, kind of on that tier of Miles Turner a little bit, but a little bit more impactful on the defensive end. And can't speak enough about Jared Allen and what he's been able to do. But over the last 15 games, they're 8th in offense and 2nd in defense. Their defense has been there for years and have always been that. Their pace helps to that. And their offense was usually in question. But their offense with Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. Now you have the additions of Max Strus, who hasn't been shooting the ball too well, but overall has been a positive for them. George Niang, Steve Morrell, guys of that nature for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. And you can't speak enough about that. They're playing great right now. Their schedule hasn't been the strongest, but who cares? They're putting it together, figuring out their rotations. And I think that's something that JD Bickerstaff has been able to do and find over the course of this season, even with all the injuries, has been able to implement Mobley back, implement Darius Garland back since they've been back. And it's going to be interesting to see how they finish this last stretch of the NBA season. Moving across here to the other team I was talking about, the New York Knicks, obviously led by Jalen Brunson, 27.6 points per game, 6.5 assists per game. Cannot speak enough about this guy. Well-deserved All-Star this year. Very emotional when he received that honor. And just looking at what Jalen Brunson has meant to this New York Knicks team, he's the second best guard behind Walt Frazier. There's no question about that. Mark Jackson was only there for a little bit. Jason Kidd was there later in his career. Raymond Felton, Chauncey Billups, Stephon Marbury, all these other guys that they couldn't find. New York Knicks couldn't find a guard. This is the perfect New York Knicks guard outside Walt Frazier. What Jalen Brunson has been able to mean to the New York Knicks team and kind of revitalize this franchise and get the buzz guard. That's why Stephen A. Smith is jumping up and down every week, because the New York Knicks have been playing really, really well. And it's because of Jalen Brunson. He has been a godsend to the New York Knicks, and can't speak enough about him and what he's done. And you just think about the Dallas Mavericks there. He recently said in the interview, I believe on All the Smoke, that twice he went to the Dallas Mavericks, 4 years, $54 million. I'll take that deal. And the Dallas Mavericks said no. And, of course, Dallas Mavericks are in a different place now. They got Luka Doncic. They got Kyrie Irving. Just recently added P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford. But you can't help but think Jalen Brunson would have been a nice spot-up guy next to a nice partner with Luka Doncic. But, of course, he didn't want to play next to Luka with that play style. Of course, it looks like he could, but it worked out for him tremendously, of course, with the contract, the all-star buzz, and the way the New York Knicks are playing. So it worked out for Jalen Brunson. Happy for him. Moving on to Julius Randle. Another guy here who has been playing really well. Of course, we were joking at the start of the season with his tour dates and shot selection, where it just looked like it was bad at that point. But since then, 24 points per game, nearly 10 rebounds a game, 5 assists per game, getting back to those all-NBA numbers for the New York Knicks. You can't speak enough about that for the New York Knicks and Julius Randle in his play. He gets kudos in all this. Sometimes he gets a little out of it. May take a bad shot here or there, but overall, when he plays well, the New York Knicks are playing well. And especially pairing up with Jalen Brunson, you can't help but respect Julius Randle and what he's been able to do this season. Eventually going to come back from that dislocated shoulder. So we'll see what happens when he returns. Moving on to the first trade the New York Knicks made this season with OG Anunoby since joining the New York Knicks, 15.6 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 1.8 steals, and 1.1 blocks. Another guy that the New York Knicks just fits that mold of both sides, being able to play defense, shoot the ball really well, especially with the steals and blocks, just being a pest on the defensive end for the New York Knicks. Probably the perfect player for Tibbs, right? Like when you think about his type of profile and being a defensive coach, he loves having OG Anunoby, too much to the point where he's playing him a lot of minutes. So hopefully this injury, he's been able to get some rest, get that bone chip out his elbow. And you just think about the modernization of the New York Knicks offense. I want to continue to say that because they went from RJ Barrett to OG Anunoby to Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, and all that shooting around Julius Randle. If he gets doubled, he's able to kick it out and able to play make from that standpoint. Jalen Brunson able to pass to those guys and play making, get to the paint and dish to those guys. That there is going to be the fundamental sound for the New York Knicks moving forward with their offense. If they can continue to do that, they're going to be a good shot to get to the Eastern Conference Finals because they hold up so well on both sides of the ball now. It's not just Jalen Brunson trying to make something happen. He has some shooters around him. Julius Randle, when he comes back. I believe Mitchell Robinson's out for the season, which sucks because he was playing well for them. Isaiah Hartenstein, hopefully he's able to come back as well. But looking at this New York Knicks team, they're going to be in the driver's seat. Both these teams, Cleveland and the New York Knicks, are going to be in position to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And when you look at both these teams here, Very impressive, very similar profiles. Last year they met in the playoffs. Wasn't as impressive. New York Knicks just ran over them. But this year, both these teams mirror up so well with the addition of both shooting to both these teams. Strong guard play, strong front court play, mirroring each other, and should be a battle. When we'll see if they match up again in a 3-6 matchup, a 4-5 matchup. We'll see how that goes. If both these teams, if the Bucks are able to come back and get the second seed. But looking at both these teams, they're going to be in the way of the Milwaukee Bucks for sure. They're going to be in the way of the Boston Celtics for sure. And both these teams are just playing great. So kudos to them. And we'll see what happens on the strong stretch, the last stretch of the NBA season. Looking at both these teams for sure.